Hello and welcome back to my channel. My name is Marin. Today's video is going to be my summary of my reading in 2024, which I am terming my 2024 hits and misses. So let's go ahead and get into it. So this year, instead of doing a ranking of my top favorite books, I have decided to just talk about the hits in both nonfiction and fiction categories and the misses in all categories. That one's kind of grouped together. So I'm gonna go ahead and start off with my hits first. Let's start with the good. And I'm going to start with the nonfiction books. These are not ranked in order of where I would put them. These were just the books that had the biggest impact on me or that I enjoyed or found the most interesting. A lot of these books are pretty dark topics, so that was kind of interesting to look at as I was putting this together. But the first one I read early in the year, and that was The Ethnic Cleansing of Palestine by Ilan Pappé. Highly recommend this book. I did talk about this in my January or February reading recap, whichever one it was. I'll link it up in the cards if you want to hear full thoughts on this one. Very powerful book, and it lets you know just how long this has been going on and the reasoning behind it. And it is written by an Israeli historian, so I feel like it's pretty unbiased. Obviously, he is writing from the perspective of someone who has lived in Israel and is still seeing just how blatantly awful things are with Palestine. So highly recommend this one. The second one that I read was another darker topic. It was called Dictatorland: The Men Who Stole Africa, which is by Paul Kenyon. This basically goes over 5 or 6, I think, of the biggest or well-known dictators in Africa and kind of what they did to the country post-colonialism. So these people, these men came to power right after Europe pulled out, thank goodness, and in many ways kind of decimated these countries. And it kind of takes you through exactly how that happened. I found it very interesting, so if that's a topic you're curious about, would highly recommend this book as well. Next is a middle grade memoir. It is called Every Falling Star: The True Story of How I Survived and Escaped North Korea, and it's by Sung-Ju Lee. I found this one very easy to read, and it does a good job of explaining what life was like in North Korea and why ultimately people are trying to escape it. And because we live in the US, we don't have a lot of information about North Korea because they are very closed door about things. So this was a very interesting look at the inner workings of North Korea and the punishments for what would happen if you went against the people in charge. So I did find this one very interesting. The audiobook was very well done, and I would highly recommend this one as well. Then I have a graphic novel that is not going to be for everyone. It is a graphic novel version of Homicide: Life on the Street, which was originally written by David Simon. The graphic novel version is done by Philippe Squarzoni, and it's 2 volumes. I am just talking about the first volume, which I felt like was more interesting and better done than the second one. I liked the first one better. If you are a fan of the TV show Homicide: Life on the Street, this is the story that show was built around and where it got its inspiration from. So I really liked this as someone who enjoyed that TV show, and I enjoyed the graphic novel version. Very gritty, dark artwork, and it was done in shades of like black and white, except for where you had blood or like the yellow police tape. That would be in color. So it was very interesting art style. I quite enjoyed it, but it would not be for everyone. Then I have The Radium Girls by Kate Moore. This is one that has gotten a lot of buzz. I know a lot of people have read this. It is the story of the women who were responsible for painting watch faces with radium-based paint and everything they had to go through to get any kind of compensation or admittance of guilt from the companies that they worked for. It is horrific. It is enraging, but I think it is a very, very well-written nonfiction book, and I would definitely recommend it. Shifting tones, the next book is The Dirt by Neil Strauss and the members of Motley Crue. It literally takes you through the formation of the band through, I think, the year 2000. And if you are a fan of 80s hair metal or Motley Crue in general, I would recommend. It definitely pulls no punches. It is just over the top and nasty at times. I had a great time with it because I love Motley Crue, but again, that one's not going to be for everyone, so be careful if you decide to read it. And then the final nonfiction one is one that I read not that long ago. It was the second to last book that I read in 2024, and it was Blood at the Root, A Racial Cleansing in America by Patrick Phillips. Again, a much darker tone. It details the racial cleansing of Forsyth County, Georgia back in 1912, and how the town or county basically stayed as a closed door white community until like the 1990s, and everything that kind of went on there. This is another one that was horrifying and enraging, and it just had me shaking my head at everything that was happening. And it gives a very good look into racism in the South in particular and how those mindsets came to be. And it was just very interesting. Again, a very dark book, horrifying, but I think still very, very important to read even now in 2025, because some things really haven't changed, and that is a huge shame. All right, switching now to my hits of the fiction genre. These are all of my 5-star fiction reads. Again, I am not ranking them in any kind of order. These were all 5 stars. I liked them for different reasons, so here we go. The first one was Check and Mate by Allie Hazelwood. This was a very cute new adult romance. Even though I think it's marketed as YA, I would put it in new adult. I had a great time with this, and I don't know anything about chess, so this was very fun to read. I loved the romance, the relationship. Highly recommend this one. This and The Love Hypothesis are definitely kind of neck and neck for my favorite Allie Hazelwood book. Next was Vera Wong's Unsolicited Advice for Murderers by Jessie Q. Satanto. This was a pick for the Literally Dead book club, and I loved this one. It is very found family. The main character, Vera Wong, was hilarious. It had some very heartbreaking and heartfelt moments. It made me tear up. I loved this one and can highly recommend this to everyone, even if mystery is not your usual genre. Then I have a few YA books. First is Far from the Tree by Robin Benway. This details a family of siblings who were all adopted, and they're kind of coming together and re-meeting each other. It was very heartfelt, made me cry. Robin Benway is a fantastic author. I've really not had anything that I didn't like from her, but this one is definitely a phenomenal book, and I would highly recommend. Then I have Akata Witch and Akata Woman by Nnedi Okorafor. Those are books 1 and 3 in her Incivity Scripts series. The second book was good too, but not 5 stars. The first one and the third one by far kind of really brought the main character's journey full circle. You're following Sunny. She realizes that she is something called a leopard person, which gives her certain abilities, and it is all about her balancing her life between our world and the world that her family lives in and the leopard people world where she has these abilities, and I just had a really good time with the series. The first book is my favorite, but the third book was extremely well done. Then I have Wrong Place, Wrong Time by Gillian McAllister. This one was so much fun. It is a kind of Groundhog Day type situation, except she keeps falling farther and farther back in time instead of repeating the same day. She watches her son kill somebody, and then the whole book is about her trying to keep that from happening. So she keeps having to go back in time, or she's getting sent back in time farther and farther until she can figure out what is going on and a potential way to stop the murder from happening. I had a good time with this one. It was very twisty turny, kept me on the edge of my seat. Highly recommend. Then I have one that is definitely not going to be for everyone, and that was I Was a Teenage Slasher by Stephen Graham Jones. I did not expect to love this one, but I had the greatest time with this. I think because the book opens up with references to 80s music and that time period, it just sucked me in and I was in the rest of the time. You're following Tally, who turns into a teenage slasher and kills several people over the course of one summer. He is telling you his story. It's very stream of consciousness. I don't have the best of luck sometimes with Stephen Graham Jones' writing style, but this one really worked for me. The audio in particular I thought was phenomenal. So this one was so much fun. I had to give it 5 stars and put it on this list. And the last one was Love, Holly by Emily Stone. It is a holiday book. I wouldn't really call it a romance because there is more to it than that. There is a lot of talk about grief and guilt, and I just really had a good time with this one. This is another one where it's a little bit of a found family aspect between our main character and an older woman whose name is Emma that she meets, and I liked this one a lot. I did talk about this in a vlog, so you may have already seen me mention it, but I'll link the vlog up above in case you would like to go back and hear full thoughts. All right, so with the hits out of the way, that means it is now time to talk about my misses. And in this case, my misses are just books that I either didn't like, or I also have a category of books that were disappointing, that I was expecting more from. So we're gonna go ahead and just start with the ones that I didn't like or wasn't vibing with first to get those out of the way. Let me go ahead and mention here the DNFs for this year. I did DNF 6 books, which is the most that I've DNF'd I think ever, but I am trying to be better about not finishing books I'm not enjoying because there are so many books out there that I do want to read. So there's no point in suffering through a book that I know I'm not going to like. So I did end up DNFing Out There Screaming, which was an anthology that we were reading for the Literally Dead book club. I only got like 4 or 5 stories into it, just was not vibing at all with it and put it aside. Then we have The Host by Stephanie Meyer. I just thought this one was boring, too long and boring, so I stopped about 250 pages in. Then I have You Know What You Did by KT Nguyen. This is another one that was for the Literally Dead book club, and I just found that I didn't care. I didn't care, so I stopped reading it. Then I had King's Cage, which is the 3rd book in the Red Queen series by Victoria Aveyard. I DNF'd in the middle of this and ultimately DNF'd the series. It just was not what I was hoping it would be. Then I had 2 books for my 24 and 2024 list. I had Tamar by Mal Peet, which had a plot twist or plot device in there that I knew I was not going to like, so I stopped reading. And then I had Brightly Woven by Alexandra Bracken, which didn't have anything inherently wrong with it, but I just found the writing very flat and kind of childish, and I just was not vibing. So those were my DNFs. That's all I really have to say about them. They're not horrible books, they just weren't for me. Now let's talk about my other books. These books did get 2 stars because I don't give 1 stars, but a couple of these really were questionable. So the first one was Fairy Tales Every Child Should Know by Hamilton Wright Maybe. I just didn't like this collection. I thought the writing was very bland and very boring and not good. So yep, 2 stars for this one. Then I had The Blackwoods by Brandy Colbert. This was another one that was just okay. I found that I just didn't care. I don't feel like enough happened in the book, and again, this one was a little boring. Next was King Solomon's Mines by H. Rider Haggard. This was a classic, and with that comes the inherent problems that we have with a lot of classics, particularly classics that are set in Africa, so I don't think I really need to say more than that. This one was rough. Then I had Glass Sword by Victoria Aveyard, which was book 2 of the Red Queen series. I really liked the first book upon rereading, and I was so excited to continue the series. The second book was a total letdown. I just felt like it was very repetitive, and I felt like she probably could have condensed it down and either added it on to the end of the first book or also cut out some of the stuff that happened in the 3rd book and put those 2 together. I don't think this needed to be a 5-book series, but that's just me. this one wasn't for me. And then the last one was a horror novella, which is called This Is Where We Talk Things Out. It's by Caitlin Marceau. This was another pick for the Literally Dead book club, and I just didn't really have a good time with it. I particularly hated the ending and felt like some things were just very questionable. This is a definite case of the main character doing things that you know she shouldn't do, and it was kind of like watching a horror movie, but not as fun. All right, so with those 2-star books out of the way, let's talk now about my disappointments from 2024. These aren't books that I necessarily gave low ratings. They were just books that I was expecting more from and was disappointed upon finishing. So the first one, again, is the Red Queen series. I already mentioned I liked the first book upon rereading, so I had high hopes, but the series itself was just and not for me. Then I had People We Meet on Vacation by Emily Henry. I loved Beach Read, and I also read Funny Story in 2024. Those are great. People We Meet on Vacation, no. I didn't like the main character in this one. I felt like the relationship was questionable as well. I just did not have a good time with it. Then I had Love on the Brain by Allie Hazelwood. Same case as People We Meet on Vacation. Didn't love it. Didn't love the characters, didn't love the setup, didn't love the book, which was disappointing because The Love Hypothesis was my favorite book of 2023. Next, I have The Wife Upstairs by Rachel Hawkins. I was just expecting a little bit more because I really liked Reckless Girls. This one was just mediocre, and I felt like I was not ever on the edge of my seat, which is what I want from a mystery thriller. So this one didn't deliver, hence why it's on this list. And the last one is Expiration Dates by Rebecca Searle. This one had a plot twist that came out of nowhere, and I felt like really ruined the book. I also hated who she ended up with at the end. So not for me, big disappointment. The only book that I had read by her was called When You Were Mine. It was a YA book, but I loved that one. This one, no. So with the hits and misses portion of this video out of the way, I want to go ahead and end this video by just doing some overall recapping of my reading stats. I don't have a ton of them here, but I want to go ahead and put them here just to kind of close out my reading from 2024. So overall in 2024, I did read 114 books for a total of 35,155 pages. This does include the 6 DNFs that I already mentioned. In terms of my book breakdown, I listened to 55 audiobooks, I read 14 ebooks, 15 physical books, and I had 30 that were a mix of either physical and audio or ebook and audio. I really found that that is kind of the sweet spot for me. I love listening and reading physically at the same time. So I'm hoping to do more of that in 2025. I thought that in a lot of ways that really brought the books to life for me, and I just really enjoyed that. In terms of genres, I'm just going to do my top 5. My top most read genre was fantasy with 17. Next was historical with 16 books, contemporary with 12 books, horror with 11 books, and mystery with 10 books. Now the historical's up there at 16 because that is what I classified the Nancy Drew books as, and I did read 12 of those in 2024. So outside of those, I only read 4 other historicals, but we got to put the numbers where they are, so it makes it look like historical was my second most read genre. My hopes for 2025 are to read more romance. I really want to get back into reading romance and to read historicals that are not Nancy Drew. So those are kind of some categories that I'm hoping will have higher numbers next year. In terms of the audience of the books, I did read 68 adult books, which marks a very big shift in my reading. Prior to this year, I was really trying to do a lot of backlog reading on YA books. This year, I really kind of just decided for the most part that a lot of YA is not for me. I do still have some books that I want to read that are YA, but overall, I think we're definitely going to start seeing a shift in that category and watching that YA number kind of really drop. So we'll see, but that's kind of what I'm thinking. So 68 adult books, 28 young adult books, 13 children's books, which were the Nancy Drew books plus 1 extra one that I read, 3 new adult books, and 2 middle grade books. So that is the breakdown of the books that I read. In terms of how I got the books, I did read 43 owned books. 37 I borrowed from the library, 18 I listened to from Everand, 5 were from Audible, and then I had a few different categories to take care of where I got other ones from. The Nancy Drews were read on Internet Archive, so those kind of fell under an other category. So that's kind of what I mean about a mix of other things. And then in terms of series versus standalone, I did read 45 series books in 2024 and 69 standalone books. So I am really trying to read down my series TBR. I will link my unfinished series video up above. It was part of this Bookmas series, but I really want to bring that down. So you probably will see quite a few series books throughout 2025 as well. And there you have it. That is my reading hits and misses for 2024. I hope you enjoyed taking a look at the things I liked and didn't like. If you did, please leave me a thumbs up. Consider subscribing to my channel if you would like to see more from me. If you made it to the end of this video, you can go ahead and leave me the book stack emoji in the comments. And otherwise, I will see you in my next video. Bye, everyone.